Mr. Chairman, let me apologize up front for this metaphor I'm about to use. I know it will insult the two vegans on the committee, me and Senator Cruz. But I believe...
Point of personal privilege.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator
That may be
Cruz.
one step below the Houston Astros thing.
I just want the people of Texas to know the truth. He is a closet vegan. I recognize, Mr. Chairman, that this goose is pretty much cooked. And I love the body postures of all of us around when people are talking and when people are saying things very original, as Mr. Kennedy just said. Folks look up and listen, and when folks are repeating what others consider to be the routine partisan posturing, I see lots of heads go down to the cell phones. So let me try not to do anything routine with the hope that my colleagues will listen to me. First of all, just with the hearing, I do think some of the things that you said earlier are right. This was a hearing conducted with decorum and professionalism. I think that's something I think all of us can at least agree to. We had some criticisms going back and forth. I found things that were troubling to me during this hearing. I tried to elicit in both private conversation and in the hearing, just conversations about what I think is one of the issues that we don't speak enough about in the United States of America, which are issues of race. I have been extremely proud of the fact that we are a Senate now that has more blacks serving on it than at any time in history, and I've been really grateful to watch my Senate colleagues, often on the floor of the Senate, my colleague Tim Scott, speak about the truth about race, and literally the last time I saw him do it, get applause from his Republican colleagues about his experiences. A United States Senator, and I have my own, who has had experiences with the Capitol Police here that have been stunning, I think, to many of my colleagues to recognize this goes on. And here we are in the backdrop of what I think is, and somebody can correct me or fact check me, what I think is the largest period of demonstrations in the history of the United States, greater than any in the civil rights movement, of millions of Americans, often in predominantly, if not all, white towns, coming out to protest issues of race. And I was surprised that in this backdrop, issues of race are so important to the Supreme Court that we had a nominee who couldn't even talk to a law review article that they wrote. And that's not, and I heard Senator Kennedy ask her yesterday, which made me smile, as you often do, my friend, ask her if she's a racist. Clearly, she's not a racist, nor is anybody who is serving in this committee. But it's not out of the bounds to ask questions about this, being that in the lifetime of my family, there have been members who've been affected by Supreme Court decisions in pretty profound ways. And it's issues that are going to continue to come up. I did find it also surprising. That's fair. Thank you, sir. And I did find it surprising that this conversation, and again, I'm new to this committee, and this conversation about does a nominee answer questions that reflect their philosophy. I thought there were a lot of questions that were in bounds that she refused to answer. And I think that that is the erosion of precedent that's going to continue in this committee. We are now heading to a period where the instructions that every Supreme Court nominee is going to get is just to not answer things, like to not being able to answer whether you believe in the peaceful transfer of power. I just found that stunning. I really did. I mean, I don't think we could ask anybody in the United States Senate, House members, high school history teachers, if they don't think that that's something somebody should do. So I found that surprising. But I'm not here to rehash comments I made in my opening about why I think this is wrong to do this. What I'd rather do, and Chairman, I think you're probably going to send me a note or flowers, but tomorrow will be the 7-year date to the date of when I got elected to be in the United States Senate. And thank you, Senator Kennedy, maybe you'll be the only one that marks.
Well, just a congratulations be sufficient.
I appreciate that.
I mean that. And before you go on, you know, this is pretty contentious time, and you know, Twitter's blocking a story about Biden and the world's turning sideways and all. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, Senator Cruz. But there would be no First Steps Act if Senator Booker, at a very crucial point in time, decided to find common ground. If they ever write the history of that bill, I'll attest to the fact that when it was about to fall apart, you kept it together. You kept your eye on the prize. I just wanted to say that.
And I'm going to attest to the fact that you and other colleagues, just yesterday, after I did talk about race, had a conversation with me about the work that we can still do together on those issues. I came to the Senate, people said it was impossible for us to pass at least some of the legislation that Dick Durbin on our side really led to get things done. I'm really proud of some of the work we've done in this committee. So I just want to actually talk about that moment I came to the United States Senate. I was elected on the 16th. My dad had just died 6 days earlier. And then I came down here grieving. My staff knew right before Vice President Joe Biden swore me in to take me over to see John Lewis, which was one of the more moving moments of my life. And my mom, in tears, walks me to be sworn in on the floor of the Senate, which was Halloween, October 31st. Now, what happened about a week later was the rules of the Senate were changed, which I've heard a lot about from colleagues about breaking the Senate. Imagine me, and again, I literally was so a little bit naive to the functioning of the Senate, and this is not an exaggeration, it's the truth. I got sworn in and we had a vote, and I didn't know how to vote. I thought there was a button you pressed, I'm looking around for it, and Menendez has to tell me, just raise your hand and say aye. And so next thing you know, I have senators coming to me to lobby me about changing a rule that surprised me because the word they were using was nuclear option. And so that got my attention. Why the heck are we doing something called the nuclear option? I mean, I thought I was going to be coming here to talk about treaties to try to prevent nuclear proliferation or nuclear catastrophe. And I had senators who I really respect, people I saw as statesmen and women, coming to me and explaining to me about what they saw was the loggerhead, the chokehold that Leader McConnell was putting on the ability of Senator Obama to put executive positions and judges on. Now, I just recently heard Mitch McConnell brag about that he was able to choke the number of judges that Obama was able to put on to give President Trump a historic number of vacancies to fill. Now, I'm not actually bringing this up as a point of argument because I've listened to this hashed out, both sides claiming injury and claiming harm in this, whatever the debate is. I believe I did the right thing with my vote. But I think I have heard the grace on both sides in private conversations with people telling me that this body as a Senate and telling me that this committee is terribly broken and remarked to me that we are tumbling towards a very bad reality. And so that's what concerns me right now in this moment, that this is another moment where we are, as an institution, eroding our norms to the point that we all are bemoaning it. Everybody, I have heard on both sides of the aisle, bemoaning it. But this isn't happening in an isolated vacuum. It's not. It's happening in a time of terrible crisis for our country. And sometimes I walk around the halls of the Senate and I feel like we're that frog in boiling water that's been having the temperature turned up so slowly that they barely notice it and are barely remarking on it. I just want to ask my colleagues to think about what is happening in the context of American history right now. And some of you all may not agree with me, but I've had enough Republican colleagues of mine that have been willing to speak out about some of these things that are really troubling to me. I saw a president of the United States bringing in military and turning gas and rubber bullets on peaceful protesters in Lafayette Park. And for what? There are people of faith, all of us around here, to hold up a Bible in an awkward way for a photo op. That was such a stunning moment that I watched a lot of what I call statespeople in America come out strongly against it, including some people in this body on the Republican side. It pushed, as I mentioned earlier, General Mattis, who we all know believes in the restraint of power in your voice, to come out and call the President of the United States a danger to our democracy. That is stunning. But it doesn't stop there. I don't know if I can point, there are better students of history on this body than I am, of a president before an election doing things to compromise the outcome and saying, if I don't win, clearly, unequivocally, this election is rigged. That's something that the presidents of my lifetime, George Bush, Ronald Reagan, would never have said. And for those of you who don't think it's problematic, we have armed militias now gearing up. Go to the website armyoftrump.com. First of all, that worries me just because I like my conservatives because usually pick things that we all agree on, calling organizations freedom or liberty or bringing in those words. This is the cult of a personality, not defend the United States, not make a fair election. This is the army of Trump. And am I exaggerating when we literally are sitting here while we have people like our governor of Michigan, where people are putting together plots to abduct elected officials in the United States of America? Does this not trouble us? The things that are going on are stunning to me. A president saying, stand back and stand by, to an organization that's just doing that, standing by. We have literally, in this moment, a president refusing to unequivocally talk about the peaceful transfer of power. All of these things are troubling. And I know some people want to cast them in partisan ways, but even the Constitution mentions the census and mentions the post office. Heck, both of those institutions of our democracy are under attack right now. I see these signs all around us that should make all of us concerned and worried about what's going to happen 19 days from now. I never thought I would be having rational conversations with Republican colleagues of mine, far be it just members of my family, that I am fearful of the violence that might happen around an election. That I am literally having conversations on my side of the aisle with people saying, what are we going to do to protect the Poles and black communities from what happened in 1981 in New Jersey, where again, people with arms came in to try to undermine people voting. This is actually going on in America. These are real conversations by rational people. This is not partisan rhetoric. This is facts, but it happens on something deeper. And I was so moved by somebody, I texted them on the Republican side who talked about these deeper issues of our country. I really appreciate what you said, Senator Kennedy, because we do have common virtue. We do have common values. We do have common cause. The lines that divide us are not nearly as strong as the ties that bind us in this country. I still believe that. Call me earnest or call me naive, I still believe that. But right now, we are doing tit for tat. I hear people calling us extreme. When there are times I sit back, I remember in 2016 that many of my colleagues were talking about a Supreme Court seat and saying, let's just keep it open. People on this committee, let's just keep the Supreme Court open for 4 years if Hillary Clinton wins. There are things that have been going on both sides. But while we are doing this, we are failing as a body to lead in a time of crisis. We have food lines in America that haven't been seen since the Great Depression. We have unemployment rate in America that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. New business starts have been going down for years, and now we have small businesses closing at rates we have not seen since the Depression. Farms. I don't know if anybody heard, but I ran for president last year. And there are farms. We are seeing the closure of the independent American farms at a rate we haven't seen since farm crises in the 80s and before. Let me go more, because I know that my colleagues are concerned with this. Life expectancy in America is going down. In every other industrial nation, it's going up. You want to talk about national anxiety? Rates of depression? Clinical depression are going up. Usage of antidepressants going up. There are all of these signs in this country that the great experiment in democracy on the planet Earth, on all comparison. In fact, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, you ran for president and lost, sir.
Yeah. Way behind what you were able to do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Not even a T-shirt in my case.
But I just want to point out to you, when I came to this body from being an executive, I really was interested in data. What's the data I had dashboards when I was mayor of my city that showed me how successful we were doing. I looked at the dashboards for America that I could find. One of them was the World Economic Forum that keeps data on the competitiveness of our democracies. We were #1 in my dad's era on every one of their metrics and every one of their measures. The quality of our infrastructure, education of our children, even the research and development. We were the innovators of the planet. Well, now we're not even in the top 10 for most of their measures. China's just built 18,000 miles of high-speed rail. Have we done a major infrastructure bill? The busiest rail corridor that goes through Delaware and New Jersey from Boston to Washington, D.C. runs half an hour slower than it did in the 60s. We used to have the most college graduates per capita. We're not in the top 10 anymore. And trying to compete in a global knowledge-based economy when other countries, R&D even, we are drafting off of the investments we made. We're not the #1 R&D, public-private investments in R&D country anymore, and in research intensivity. I can go on, but I want to come to this conclusion. We are failing as a body to serve the purposes to which we all care. And the best we can do is blame each other. And each of us are participating in the erosion of this body. And this is just yet another example of that. People here think this is wrong. And I'm not just saying people on our side, because again, the words of my colleagues think this is wrong. And this goose is cooked. But God, I'm appealing right now. I'm one of these folks that during times like this, maybe texting, heckling back and forth with my friends that I text on the other side of this aisle, and I hope they'll never make those public. But I'm appealing right now that we've got to find a way to stop this. The only thing that heals this body is what I call a revival of civic grace. Somewhere along the line, there's going to be a moment, it's coming, I think it's long past, that there has to be acts of heroism when it comes to extending of grace. My friend Mike Lee, I quote you, the only person I'm going to personalize quote except for Kennedy, who yesterday talked about how good of a tight end I was and an athlete I was. But I'm going to quote my friend just because I know you won't take personal affront to me quoting you. You said, "We had the authority to do this." I know you are a student of history, as am I. Some of the greatest acts in American history are when people had the authority to do something and they showed the restraint of power and didn't use that authority. This is one of those moments where that is the kind of grace that can stop the tumbling of this institution further towards what I think will be a real constitutional crisis and will help us to begin to rise together to save this nation. We are now at a point with what we're about to do here, unless my colleague's resolution somehow passes, where we are going to set another firm foot to the erosion of our institutions. And I'm telling you right now, I hear rational people telling me things like, first time in Supreme Court history that we had the most anti-democratic Supreme Court, because they bring up facts like, hey, this is the president wasn't elected with the majority and confirmed by a Senate that has 10 million less votes, the majority than the minority. That these are anti-democratic things that are happening. We have to stop them. I'm hearing that. As just in the same way that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, when Hillary Clinton seemed to be the winner, were talking about trying to stop, do things to stop. What has to stop is that. I'm going to end with my favorite point, that you may have had these moments. It was in Iowa, Chuck Grassley. I was running for a stage in a town hall, and I'm about to leap up on the stage, and a big guy sees me. Mr. Chairman, I'm a big guy, former All-American football player. Older I get, the better I was, man. And I'm about to jump up on that stage, and a guy stops me and says, "Dude, I want you to punch Donald Trump in the face." And I looked at him deadpan, and I said, "Dude, that's a felony." I am nowhere near, I'm a shadow of the kind of grace that John McCain showed when somebody was eviscerating Barack Obama personally, and he grabbed the microphone from him and talked about how good of a family person Barack Obama was, not the easy vilification that we often do. I can't imagine for the life of me the current president doing something like that. What this body has to rise to, I hope it's now, is to understand that what this nation needs from us is that grace. And I failed in this, but this has come the moment in American history that we need to show it. I pray that my colleagues, 2 of them, will join the other 2 Republicans and stop this from happening, to show that grace now. Because this is a point when millions of Americans are suffering and hurting and losing the very idea of what it means to be an American in terms of the dream and the promise of this country. This is the moment that this nation needs from this body actions of grace.
Thank you. Senator White.